May the words of my mouth and the meditations of my heart be acceptable unto you, my guide, my strength, and my Redeemer. Amen.
Amen.
So this summer, we always do something a little different the last couple of months of the summer. And this summer, what we're going to do is explore some of the lesser-known characters in the Bible. You know, those people that you've heard of, but maybe you don't remember so well. And sometimes they only get a couple of lines, but those couple of lines are very intriguing. And some of them have had a great impact on other people in the Bible that we generally call our heroes. So today, I want to talk about the Queen of Sheba. Now, my mother used to talk about the Queen of Sheba on occasion, but mostly she used it by saying, "Who do you think you are, the Queen of Sheba?" and I don't think she meant a rich, powerful queen. I think she meant somebody who was very demanding. But the queen came from either southern Arabia, probably around what is now Yemen, or Ethiopia. We're not sure. But she came to visit Solomon. And she brought a caravan. A caravan. Camels and camels and camels and camels, laden with gold, precious gems, and spices. And as closely as we can tell, she was there to make an alliance with Israel. Now, yes, she was there to seek Solomon's wisdom, but I suspect that the alliance was perhaps at least as important. You know, probably it was about mutual protection from the kingdoms that were between the two countries. Now, the Bible tells us that Solomon and Sheba became close, perhaps even intimate. And extra-biblical texts tell us all kinds of other interesting things. That they had a son. I guess that would mean that they didn't perhaps become intimate. Anyway. That they had a son named Menelik I, who was emperor of Ethiopia. And there are even some traditions that say that Menelik came back to visit Solomon and stole the Ark of the Covenant and took it back to Ethiopia. We don't know. We don't know, but they're interesting. So, aside from kind of an interesting story, why do we care about the Queen of Sheba? Why should we care? You know, we can explore the loss of the Ark, but we don't have to do it here because there are 73,000 TV shows that do that for you. And we could find a little titillation in the relationship between the Queen and Solomon. Or we could look at the alliance. We could do lots of things. You know, the Middle East at that time, as it is today, was not an entirely peaceful place. It appears that the Queen would have had to travel for months to meet with Solomon and to strike a trade deal or a military alliance or to seek wisdom. If she was looking for mutual protection and cooperation, that's one thing. But apparently she also found love. And in this case, it was romantic love. There are some sources that opine that the Song of Solomon was written about the Queen of Sheba. And you'll have to look at that one for yourself. It's kind of interesting. Romantic love. You know, but there are so many other kinds of love in the world. So many kinds of love. That we can't help but wonder, or at least I can't help but wonder, what other kinds of love this queen had. You know, in order to act as the queen of a wealthy nation, she had to be inspired to help and protect her people. And that's probably why she traveled all of those miles to Israel. You know, I wonder how desperate she must have been. How desperate. What were the dangers that she and her people faced? You know, because she was clearly rich. So she could have just left Sheba and gone somewhere else and lived comfortably. But she didn't do that. She didn't do that. She took the trip. She took the risk, and somehow the risk seems to have paid off. Now, how are we like the Queen of Sheba? Now, I know some of you are kind of regal, and yes, we could call you queens. You know, though...
Yeah, not me.
Okay. Most of us, I think here, probably all of us, aren't rich enough to travel months to make a deal. And we don't rule a country. We do search for security and we search for freedom. And we do find love in places where we would not expect to find it. And we do have decisions to make about what we are willing to do for that love and that security. So, let's think about it a minute. Are you willing to load up all of your goods, all of your spices and gold and jewels, and haul them off to give to someone else for security? It's a question. How about giving up your freedom for security? Another question. You know what? In our personal relationships, we do this all the time. We do. Do you know someone who left a job and friends to move in with a lover? Do you know somebody who's willing to give up self-direction to accept another person's control in order to have that security? I know people. You know, sometimes it's necessary. I understand this. Sometimes it's necessary, you know, because we all know of young LGBT folk and young straight folk too, who who either leave or are kicked out of their family homes and end up living on the street. And they do some things that don't seem good, but seem necessary, at least to them. They find themselves in difficult relationships in order to make sure that they have a warm place to sleep and enough to eat. So, another question. Are you willing to go the extra mile to help someone else? You know, the Queen of Sheba traveled for months to ensure that her people were protected. What are you willing to do? What are you willing to do? What are you willing to do for your children? What are you willing to do for your partner or your spouse? You know what? Most of us would say we're willing to go pretty far for those people. Pretty far. But how far are you willing to go for someone who has no food? How far will you go to help that person who's on the street? How far are you willing to go to fill it in? Fill in the blank. What is that one thing that bothers you about the world? How far are you willing to go? Are you willing to grab a group of people and gather them together and figure out a way to help? Are you willing to put yourself at risk financially, maybe even physically, at risk to do what you believe in? It's a question. It's a question. So, we would ask. Maybe I wouldn't ask. Maybe I would just suggest that maybe some of us should look to the Queen of Sheba and think about what it is that we are called to do. And think about whether we're willing to load up the camels and travel to find what it is that we need, be it wisdom or security or maybe just a long trip. Amen?
Amen.